Today's riddle is sparked by that park full of roses. It finally ended on this day after 385 days. So, what do you think this was? Keep watching and you shall find out in a few minutes. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Sotonye Afiesimama. If you're a subscriber, thank you for subscribing to my channel. Thank you for dropping by once again. If you're a returning visitor, thanks for dropping by once again. I'd encourage you to subscribe so that you receive updates of my video uploads. It also helps me push this video to more viewers as well. If you're here for the first time, thank you for visiting my channel. I talk about historical events that happened on this day, obviously the important ones. The idea is that we learn from history, especially the negative occurrences, and so that we can improve or avert problems from occurring in the future. Okay, there's a very good example today which I'm going to touch on very soon, in less than a minute. I'm going to use that as an example. Okay, so let's get cracking with the important events that happened on this day. The year is 1860, and yes, this is the event I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to make a connection to what happened recently in West Africa. So this is the day that independence was declared. As you can see from this flag, South Carolina declared independence from the Union on the 20th of December 1860. Why did they do that? So this happened shortly after Abraham Lincoln's election as US President. You know, this was the first state to secede from the Union. And the reason was South Carolina was one of the slave holding states. You know, this was one of the states with plantations where slaves worked in plantations. And, you know, one of the things that I read that really caught my attention and made me sad was the fact that the statement was made that these Negroes were incapable of becoming citizens. Basically, they were looked down upon. African Americans, they couldn't vote. Obviously, they were generating the wealth of these states, the southern slaveholding state plantations. The North was against slavery. And I think most of the northern states voted for Abraham Lincoln, who was an abolitionist. You know, he didn't think slavery was right. He didn't think that a nation could exist with half of the states endorsing slavery and the other half not endorsing slavery. So, I mean, something had to give at some point. So anyway, South Carolina decided to secede and become a nation or a state of their own, and because they didn't want slavery to end, which is quite sad. You know, but as they say, the rest is history. Slavery eventually ended. But what I was going to touch on was, you know, the declaration that South Carolina made, you know, in spite of the fact that the tide had turned against slavery. Eventually slavery came to an end. Now let's fast forward to the year 2020, and we're in Nigeria, and this was middle of October. So Nigeria celebrated her 60th independence anniversary from the United Kingdom on the 1st of October. A few days later, protests started in Nigeria, the SARS protests. So SARS simply stands for Special Anti-Robbery Squad. This special group of police men and women were drafted to combat fraud, essentially, cyber fraud. And they started harassing young people. Some were killed, some imprisoned, you know, some had their laptops and phones stolen or broken into. So protests are sparked all over the country, and it wasn't now so much about the fact that the young men and women have been killed and have been maltreated and so on and so forth. It was about corruption in the country and in the government. So SARS now eventually morphed into what's the word now? I'm trying to remember now. The senators and reps salaries. So SARS now became senators and rep salaries. Now, it's interesting to note that in a country like Nigeria of 200 million people, where most of that population lives on less than $1 a day, okay, this is a United Nations fact, so it's not something I just pulled out of thin air. I've lived in Nigeria for nearly half of my life, so I know this to be true. You have senators who earn more than the United States president, and we don't have just one senator, right? We have hundreds of senators in Nigeria earning more than the US president. I mean, how can anyone justify that? So, I have talked about history repeating itself. This oppressive regime, this oppressive government, which seeks to disenfranchise the youths, not provide enough jobs, self-seeking politicians who just want to enrich their pockets and take care of their kith and kin and neglect the rest of the population. They're not thinking of building factories to employ youths. No. All they're thinking about is themselves, stashing away money in Swiss accounts, buying houses in America, in Europe, especially in London, South Africa, Dubai. Some of them have hundreds of houses, literally hundreds. I'm like, I kid you not, literally hundreds. How can one human being amass so much wealth to the detriment of his own country, of his own people? So this is going to come to an end. That's my own prediction. It's going to come to an end. Slavery came to an end, so this is going to come to an end. So this is where you look into history and say, okay, this happened. There were protests. People were fed up. They were sick and tired of being slaves. They fought against slavery, and they eventually won. So whatever is going on in Nigeria, it is definitely going to come to an end one day. Definitely going to come to an end. It's going to take time, but it will definitely come to an end. So this SARS protest was one of the, it was an eye-opening moment for the rest of the world. They saw what exactly was going on in Nigeria. Nigeria has potential, huge potential to do very well in the world, in the community of nations. But we're having detractors from within and from without. It's easy to blame those on the outside, but trust me, most of the problems that happen in Nigeria are caused by Nigerians themselves. Let's stop blaming external forces. Yes, they have their own issues, but if you bring things to a personal level, when you have issues, what causes most of your issues you have? Say you commit a crime, you end up in prison. Is it mostly yourself, or is it mostly other people who cause the problems for you? It's mostly yourself. Bob Marley sang this song, "Emancipate Yourself from Mental Slavery." Yeah, a lot of us, and now I'm not just reducing this to race now. We as a human race, our biggest problem, or one of our biggest problems, is mental slavery. One of our biggest problems is ourselves. So we need to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery and push forward. Stop blaming the other man or the other woman. Most of the issues we have stem from ourselves. It starts from within to change. Okay, so this problem in Nigeria and in most West African countries where presidents don't want to leave power, once they get into power, they change the constitution so that they can be presidents for life. It's going to come to an end one day. The people are going to rise up and things will change. Believe me, they will change, because history shows that things change when the people rise up and say enough is enough. Okay, so I'm going to show you some more pictures of South Carolina. Beautiful state. Once did a road trip from Texas, Houston, Texas, all the way to New York. 18 hours, 2,100 miles. Best road trip of my life. Highly recommended. It's beautiful South Carolina. This must be the capital of South Carolina. But this is Greenville, South Carolina. So not the capital. This is Myrtle Beach. Some more pictures of the countryside in South Carolina. Last but not least, greetings from South Carolina. Okay, let's move on now to the next event on this day. Carter G. Woodson was born. The founder of Black History Month was born on this day in New Canton, Virginia. 1875 was the year. Carter G. Woodson. And this quote, I'm going to read out this quote again. Those who cannot see or may not be watching, perhaps driving or cooking or whatever. I'll read what's here. So Carter G. Woodson states, history shows that it does not matter who is in power or what revolutionary forces take over the government. Those who have not learned to do for themselves and have to depend solely on others never obtain any more rights or privileges in the end than they had in the beginning. This is just in line with what I just said a few minutes ago. I didn't even know that this was coming. I had forgotten that this quote was in line with what I was going to say. But there you are. Totally agree with Carter G. Woodson. Okay. Right, so let's move on now to the year 1946. On this day, Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life, a drama starring Jimmy Stewart, premiered and later became a holiday classic. If you haven't seen this movie, go check it out. Lovely, lovely, feel-good movie, It's a Wonderful Life. So it made its premiere on this day and later became a holiday classic. 10 years later, 1956, this was the day the African American community of Montgomery, Alabama, voted unanimously to end its 385-day bus boycott. So did you get the answer to the riddle at the beginning? I'll repeat the riddle. Sparked by that park full of roses. Who was that park full of roses? Rosa Parks. So she sparked the bus boycott, which finally ended on this day, 385 days later. Okay, so if you haven't watched my video about Rosa Parks, go check it out. If I find it, I'll put a link here as usual. Rosa Parks started this bus boycott, which ended on this day, sparked by that park full of roses. I hope you like my cryptic clue, cryptic puzzle or riddle, whatever you call it. Anyway, so this was the day that ended. One more picture, you can see Martin Luther King Jr. on the bus with his cronies. Okay, let's move on now to the year 1959. So 3 years later, Trent Tucker, retired NBA player, was born in Tarboro, North Carolina. Tucker played 9 seasons with the Knicks before joining the San Antonio Spurs in 1991 for 1 season before joining the Chicago Bulls. As you can see, he's got the Chicago Bulls jersey on, who won 1993 NBA championships. So Trent Tucker, happy birthday, he's 61 years old today. In 1986, on this day, sadly, the first African American network anchor, Max Robinson, who joined ABC's World News Tonight, died from AIDS-related complications. He was founder of the National Association of Black Journalists. Also in 1986, exactly on the same day, sadly, what has now been known as the Howard Beach incident. Yes, there was a murder, as you can tell from this book cover. Incident at Howard Beach, the case for murder by Charles J. Hines and Bob Drury. Michael Griffith, 23-year-old African-American, and 2 of his black friends, Cedric Sandiford and Timothy Grimes' car. Timothy Grimes' car broke down near a local pizza parlor in Howard Beach, New York. They walked into New Park Pizza, asked to use a phone, but were refused. They then sat down to eat a slice of pizza. A mob of white men accosted the men as they left the pizza parlor and beat them. Griffith was struck by a car and killed as he attempted to get away from his attackers. So that's the sad incident that occurred on this day, reported by Amsterdam News, in New York, Amsterdam News. 3 thugs charged with murder in terror case. Say gangsters car killed fleeing man. So these guys were eventually arrested and, jailed. So on that note, we have come to the end of today's Today in History. History is still repeating itself. We still have violence against African Americans in America. It's a very, very, very long list. We hope that as the years go by, that these incidents would reduce, and then we will all be treated as equals eventually, not attacked because of the color of our skin or, our size, whether we're fat or thin, we're tall or short, we're Asian, we're white, we're, Australian Aborigine, American Indian, doesn't matter. We're all members of the human race and should be treated with respect. Okay, guys, we've come to the end of today's Today in History. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you haven't liked or shared or subscribed, please do all 3. Thanks again for dropping by. Stay safe, and I shall see you tomorrow, December 21st. Do not forget, there's something coming up tomorrow. It's big, especially if you're into space and astronomy and, you like things about that sort of stuff. There's a celestial event happening tomorrow. I'm not talking about the winter solstice now, which is the shortest day of the year. Something else is going to happen tomorrow, which you should watch out for. So I'll share that in tomorrow's video. Okay, take care. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.